Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Undisputed Studios podcast. My name is Isaiah, and yes, I've been gone for a few weeks. I was getting sued. I'm sorry. Disney said you can't make a Patreon, and I said yes, I can, so I made one. Patreon.com/undisputed. You could go there, support whatever I'm doing. But Disney said, I'm gonna sue you. That's right. I was getting sued. I wasn't suing them. Somebody else is suing them at the moment. We'll talk about that later. This bit is running long, but thank you for listening to the podcast. Okay, so as I just mentioned, a few weeks late. I'm recording this on Tuesday, so tomorrow, at the time of recording tomorrow, is going to mark 3 weeks since Loki finished up. I haven't reviewed the final episode, so I'm going to talk about it briefly here. And you may be wondering, of all of the episodes to review, the finale is something that you should have reviewed right when it came out. I thought about doing it, but what was I going to say? Seriously, what was I going to say that hasn't been said by everybody else? Oh, okay, He Who Remains. That was great. Great introduction. It was fun. It was a good performance. It was fun to listen about him talk about the multiverse. And what else do you want me to say? That's about it. That was like the entire episode. Oh, the timeline, the branches, yada, yada, yada. Everybody's already talked about this. And I'm not just saying I'm like above saying what everybody else is saying, but then also it was just like a setup episode. That's all it was. It was a setup episode to season 2. It was a setup episode to Doctor Strange, I'm assuming. It was a setup to What If, I'm assuming. It was a setup to Ant-Man 3. It was a setup probably to like Thor, maybe. It was a setup episode. It was a fun setup episode, but it was a setup episode. So I didn't have a need to come on here and just like talk about it, because it's like, I don't know. Like, what am I going to break down? Well, I have one thing to break down, I think. And we'll talk about this in just a moment. But we'll find out what the fuck's going to happen in later things. Am I happy about that? Not necessarily. I think it should have been more definitive of an ending. But I still liked it. But the one thing that I do want to address about this finale, right? Oh yeah, also, this podcast, we're briefly talking about Loki, but this podcast is mainly going to be about What If. That's coming in, what is it? Hold on, let me check real quick. Next week, holy shit. Next Wednesday, that's crazy. Okay, I'm excited about that show. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But right now, Loki, the only thing I want to talk about is the ending, the very, very last moment of the finale. Loki, obviously, in a totally different universe, not a different timeline, because I've been seeing this on the internet. Most people are saying, oh, he because like the branches happened, he got sent to another timeline to where, oh, it was Kang who was running the TVA all along. I don't believe that. I think Sylvie sent Loki to a completely different universe where Kang was always the leader. It was just always, because it doesn't make sense to me that the TVA would be like changed in a branch reality, because the TVA is supposed to be above time, right? That's the whole point of it, unless that's a lie. But I don't think that's a lie. I think that was one of the few things about the TVA that was true, is that it's above time. It's above all of the timelines, right? It's its own thing, right? That's how they could go back and forth, because they're above time. So when Loki he comes back, and then he does the greatest moment in any MCU show or movie, where Mobius is talking to I forget the name and the letter and number of the woman, but they're talking like, ooh, does he want us to let it branch, whatever? And then Loki's like, you can't. And then Mobius says the greatest response ever put on an MCU property. He goes, what? And that's it. He just, what? Perfect response. Best moment. But Loki, he looks at the statue and he's like, oh, it's Kang. Holy shit, what the fuck? That's not just like rewriting history, because I'm going off the endgame rules. You can't go back and change the past. So obviously he's not in the same timeline that he was in earlier in the series, right? And I don't think it's a branch. I think he's just in a completely different universe. They got to go back, I don't know, maybe in Doctor Strange, maybe Loki's going to appear there, where they got to pluck him from a completely different universe. because I don't know. It's weird. It seemed like this show keeps saying timelines, right? But they also say multiverse, multiversal war, all of this. But what does multiverse mean? Multiple universes. Why do they keep saying timelines? It seems like they're saying timeline and universe interchangeably. Like they're the same thing, but they're not. So my thought process, I'm not a scientist, okay? I'm not a scientist. But I'm thinking, okay, if they're calling it the sacred timeline, then I'm thinking inside of a single universe is one timeline, right? And there's potential to have branches and stuff like that, multiple timelines, all of that. But what He Who Remains was doing was cutting off all those branches, right? So there's only like a singular timeline, but there's potential to have more. But I think there could be other universes also with infinite timelines. And that's what I think Loki went to, where, I don't know, maybe, Loki for like up until that final moment, Loki was in like universe F, right? Let's just call that universe F. And then at the very end, when Sylvie pushes him to another place, he is now in universe G, where universe G could be, it could have a quote unquote sacred timeline too, where now Kang is the ruler, the leader of the TVA, but then also universe G could have infinite branches. And then so could universe H. But then you go back to universe G, right? And I don't know, the one where he got pushed out of, I think I said universe G. I don't know, I'm forgetting. But universe G is the original one that we saw for most of the Loki series. That one now, because Sylvie killed He Who Remains, now all those branches are now coming into existence again. But I think Loki is in a completely different universe. Completely. Because I don't buy the whole, it has to be different universes, because how would Sylvie and Loki even be able to exist in the same place? They had to be brought from different universes entirely. Because if there's one timeline, let's just say He Who Remains was telling the truth, that he was, keeping out the branches and stuff. There can't be in one universe, at least I don't think, two separate Asgards with two separate Lokis. It has to be different universes, right? At least that's my thinking. So I don't know. I think they have to explain that. I think that's a major thing. They have to explain what exactly is a universe and what exactly is a timeline. Can multiple timelines be in a universe, or are they just saying timeline for, are they using timeline as a way of saying universe? I don't know what's going on, but I do think they need to explain that, because it's confusing. Where is Loki? I mean, they are going to touch on where he is in season 2, but that's a long way away. I don't think season 2 is coming next year. I think it's coming 2 years from now. I think it's coming after Ant-Man. I mean, we might see Loki in Doctor Strange. I think I saw something where he might be in it, but I don't think it's confirmed. He might be in it. And he also might be in Thor. That's my thought. I think he might appear in Thor somehow. I don't know how, but, I think he'll be in Thor. I don't know. Maybe Spider-Man. I don't know. Maybe they'll give answers earlier than season 2, but I'm not sure. But I think it's a huge thing for them to be like, here's the difference between universe and timeline, because they haven't done much of a good job. Or, for all I know, when Shang-Chi comes out next month, that's where they're somehow going to explain it there, because I don't know. They have Abomination and Wong in that movie too, which I didn't expect. So maybe they're just going to explain the multiverse there. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, that's like the biggest thing I want to talk about from that finale. I mean, the Sylvie Loki thing, obviously they were going to kiss. Obviously. I still have no fucking clue why they like each other. I mean, they knew each other for like, what, a couple days, and like, they're like, oh, I'm Loki too. Oh man, my life's been hard. My life's hard too. And they're like, okay, now we're just going to kiss or something. We're in love somehow. I don't know. I barely know anything about you. All right, though. I don't know. It was weird. It's like Loki's like, I'm supposed to believe he's thousands of years old. And then, like, why is Sylvie the one to be like, oh my God, I love her. Why? What is it about her? It's weird. And I'm not even talking about the people who were complaining about, oh, it's like incest with himself. I don't even give a fuck. I think that's cool. I think it's weird. It's wacky. I'm like, I'm all for it, but I just don't know why it's happening. I'm cool with it happening. I don't know why it's happening, though. What do you know about this girl, Sylvie? I barely know anything about her. I don't know. It is weird. Loki is a simp. All right, but the finale was cool. I don't know. I liked He Who Remains. He was cool. He was wacky, too. Jumping up on tables and stuff. Also a favorite line where, I forget what happens, but he just freaks out. And he's like, grow up, Sylvie. Grow up. Murderer. Hypocrite. And it's like, damn. He's off his rocker. He's been alone for a long time. Yeah, so that was Loki finale 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks late on this review. It was all right. Also, something else that's weird. When Mobius, like at the end of episode 5 where he goes back to the TVA and it's like this big moment, you're like, oh shit, he's going to go confront Renslayer. And then he confronts her, and then like he just walks up to her, and then like, doesn't she just like kick him down to the ground? And he's like, oh, okay, I guess you got me. Like what is this? What's with this show and these weird, like, aha, gotcha moments where Renslayer just kicks him down, and then that's it. She wins the interaction. And then in that flashback where Sylvie was a little girl when she gets abducted by the TVA, like they're standing in the courtroom, and then all Sylvie does is like stomp on Renslayer's foot, steals her gadget, and then like is like 7 feet away from her, and then Renslayer just stands there, and then Sylvie escapes. It's like, what is with these weird, like, one like hit things, and then all of a sudden I got all the power. You're like at a complete disadvantage, and now we're just gonna stand here. It's weird. I don't know. The show overall, it was cool. It started off really great. It's weird. WandaVision still number one, absolutely. With each episode, when it ended, I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait for the next one. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier happened. And then I think I've talked about this on the podcast. It's like a mountain. I keep saying to people, it's like a mountain. It's like it started off, in the valley. It was low. It's like, okay, I guess this is what's happening. I guess this is the show. And then when Zemo showed up and they were doing that stuff, they went over to, man, I'm forgetting the city, but the city they went to. I'm like, okay, this is fun. It went up a mountain, Now we're at the peak of the mountain. This is very exciting. And then, weirdly, as a coincidence, when Zemo got taken out of the show, oh, hey, look, now it's falling off a cliff going back to the valley. It's not very fun anymore. I think you got, like, Falcon doing 20-minute speeches down on the ground to political figures who are just letting him just keep talking as he holds a stolen government. Yes, I know. Government property is a loose term for it because they don't actually own it. But he's sitting there holding stolen government property. And then Falcon, the speech is just like, do better. And it's like, oh, great idea, Falcon. I don't think anybody's ever thought of that before. But I'm not going on a rant about that show again. But yeah, then it's just like, okay, this show isn't as fun as it was in the middle. Loki, same way. But I guess the reverse, or I don't know. The beginning was cool. And then the Sylvie stuff at the start was intriguing. And then they did. How do you have 6 episodes, right? You only have 6 episodes. How do you have a filler episode in the middle? It's only 6 episodes. How do you have a filler episode? And yes, I'm talking about the Lamentus episode, where they're just walking around this planet. And it's like, there's barely anything going on. I think the only thing we learned from the episode was that everybody in the TVA are variants, right? That's the only thing. An entire episode. You only made 6 episodes. How do you have a filler episode? Just put more stuff in there, forehead. I don't understand. Yeah, but we had that filler episode, and then, what was episode 4 when they went back to the TVA, right? Oh yeah, then episode 4 that did get crazy, right? Maybe it's like alright, so it started off on top of the mountain, and then it dropped down to a valley. Okay, maybe it's multiple mountains, right? Alright, so, and then we drop down. We had that filler episode. And then we went to an all-time high. I think episode 4 is where they, confronted the timekeepers, and then Sylvie chopped off its head and that whole thing, and then Loki got pruned and all this crazy stuff happened. Oh, yeah, also Owen Wilson. Also Mobius got pruned too. So that was crazy. Watching that episode was a trip. I did not know what the fuck was going on. And then all of a sudden Loki's there with other Lokis. That was crazy. And then episode 5 happened. Episode 5 was pretty cool too. Not as crazy as I thought it was going to be, but still kind of crazy. And then episode 6 kind of just like, the He Who Remains stuff was also pretty high, but like overall it was just like, all right. Because even though it was cool listening to the dude talk, he was talking for quite a while. Just watching it, I'm like, Loki has just been sitting in that chair for a long time listening. This is crazy. So overall, the show was like, it was alright. It definitely better than Falcon and Winter Soldier, but like, I don't know. It still had some issues on its own. But let's move on to the main topic, what I'm actually excited to talk about today. What If is happening in just a week. And this show is going to be crazy. Because, when this show first got announced and stuff, it's animation, it's different, but it's like Marvel Studios is producing it. It's like, okay, this could be a fun side thing. You know what I mean? Just asking what if this happened instead of this happened in the movie. I'm like, this is a fun concept, but it's not really going to be that important. When we're like in the middle of Loki, like the second half of Loki, I came to that realization where I'm like, I think What If is going to be very important now. Because it's probably going to deal with the multiverse and explain it. I think this show, it's going to be like, fun too, right? Doing this What If and stuff. But I think the secret motive for making this show is going to be giving more depth to the multiverse and doing things like explaining the rules of what can and can't happen with the multiverse, so that it's basically give us details that we should know while watching these future movies and stuff, but details that the characters in the future movies don't necessarily need to know, or at least like at the time of the events happening. Right? I think the Doctor Strange in this multiverse is gonna learn something about the multiverse that, like when he comes across like Wanda in the next movie, he doesn't actually need to explain a part of it to her, but it's something we need to know for it to make sense for us to watch. Does that make sense? It should make sense. So I think that's going to be the primary goal of the show, just to give us more information about the multiverse. Because I saw somewhere recently, I'm forgetting where, I think it was a website or an interview, something like that, where somebody on this show said that Captain Carter is going to be in every season of the show. And I thought to myself, season? The show hasn't even had its first season yet. Why are we talking about future seasons and like confirming things for other seasons? And then that's what hit me again. I'm like, okay, so Captain Carter is obviously going to be important to not just this show, this season or a couple episodes, but like every season, like the entire show, she's going to be very important. Like, why would they need to explain that to us before the first season even drops? I think it's because whatever's going to happen with Captain Carter, whatever story they're going to be telling is going to be so important that it's going to be a through line to everything else. So that right there tells me this isn't just like, just like a show on the side just to do something fun. They have like plans for this show. Whether, I can't say whether it's going to heavily tie into the movies or not, but at least for the show itself, they already have big plans to where they have to like come out and be like, yeah, this one character, yeah, we can already confirm to you that she's not going to die. She's going to keep appearing in the show. And I think that's very telling on to what the show is going to be. They got some big plans for this show. So it's going to be like What If is going to work as like this fun show of asking what if and doing all this cool stuff. But it's also going to push the overall narrative that all the movies are doing. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it is. That's what they do with all their solo movies. They're like, oh, here's this, this story on its own, but also you look at it after you watch it. You're like, oh shit, they're setting up this thing for later on. I think What If is going to be no different now. It's going to be just as important as Loki is. It's going to be just important as WandaVision is. We just don't know, like, what's it going to be pushing. I think the obvious one might be Doctor Strange, but it could, like, they could drop a bomb to where it's like, oh, this is something we're explaining to set you up for Spider-Man. I've also seen some people be confused that there are some characters that have different voices. They didn't actually get the actors from the MCU to voice certain characters. I think, even though it is kind of weird, but I think it makes sense completely. Because even though, like, the start of the new trailer where it's, they're like, oh, it's Tony Stark in the Humvee and it gets blown up and stuff. Even though we've seen that in a previous movie at the start of the first Iron Man, that's not actually the same moment that we watched. It's just very similar. It's a very similar timeline because it's different. So what if Killmonger saves him? That's a completely different... I don't know what to call it. It's a different timeline. It's a different universe. It's both a different timeline and a different universe. I don't know what to say, but that's why I'm saying they need to explain this difference pretty soon. But I'm going to go with different universe. It's a completely different universe of what we've seen before. So, and like we saw with Loki, we have different Lokis that look different than Tom Hiddleston, but we also had a variant that looked exactly and sounded exactly like Tom Hiddleston. So, I think it works. It is going to be weird if you have, like, I think Drax is going to have a different voice. I don't think Batista is going to be in the show. So Drax is going to have a different voice, but then, like, Thor is going to, I do believe that's Chris Hemsworth. I don't know. It's going to be weird, but it does make sense. Some universes have different versions of the character where they sound different. Some they have the same. Some they look different. Some, it's all a mixed bag. I think that's cool. Not cool, but it makes sense. Also, what recently was reported is that this show is only going to be 9 episodes. It was originally going to be 10. Both of the seasons are supposed to be 10 episodes. Now they're only 9 episodes. That's interesting. It's very interesting. Which makes me kind of question how much of a through line these stories have. Because, I just talked, 10 minutes about how important the show is going to be. But then, like, a report is like, oh, maybe one of the episodes got pushed to season 2. Like, the 10th episode is getting pushed to season 2. If it's made already or if it's not ready in time, whatever. Like, an episode is going to season 2. So, I don't know. Like, in my mind, I would be like, okay, all these episodes, like, build on top of each other. And then, they have a season finale where everything explodes. But if they just, like, if they're able to pluck an episode from season 1 and put in season 2, I don't know. I don't know about this show. I still think it's going to tie into the MCU. I think it's going to be important, but I just don't know how. It's very unpredictable. It's unpredictable and it's exciting. I'm excited. I'm hoping for a ton, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, but I'm hoping for a ton of MCU references. Just like, oh, you remember this from this movie? Oh, here's a tweak to it. I get that you're probably listening to me say that, and you're like, but that's the point of the show. Making tweaks. But I mean, like, heavy tweaks. Like, every single minute, there's like, ooh, here's a reference, here's a reference, here's a reference, here's a reference. Because, this could easily be something where they're like, oh, we have, like, an overall tweak that's made. Like, okay, for example, the Iron Man thing. All right, Iron Man gets saved by Killmonger. What if that tweak is, like, the only tweak and, like, reference that's made? And then from there, it just goes on a completely different thing. Which I think part of that is true. But I want, even though after that tweak is made, I want the rest of the episode to also be references. Even though there's, like, a different situation that we're watching, I want references to keep happening. But I'm excited. It's only a week away. I'm surprised by that. All right, next week. Okay, so I know I said with Loki I was going to review every episode. All right, and I did review every episode. But I mean, like, relatively soon after it releases. With What If, I'm going to try again. Okay? I'm going to try the day after What If episodes air. I'm going to try to do a podcast. Okay? I just need to pull myself together and review it. Okay? Because I don't mean to brag, but that Black Widow review we did a few weeks ago, that got quite a few amount of listens. Okay? And for a podcast, it like barely operates, and we just started a couple months ago. That's pretty good. So I guess a couple of you like listening to us. I know I'm a one-man team right now here. There's usually two of us. But today you're just stuck with me, talking and ranting for 10 minutes about what the difference is between a timeline and a universe. They need to explain it. Okay, I think that's about it. I'm excited for What If. Oh yeah, also, I should mention, Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney. Again, what am I going to say that hasn't been said? Get her money. You don't just switch up. You know, if the deal is that she gets a cut of what the movie makes in the theaters, and then you go, hey, we're doing a dual release, you need to give her a cut of Disney Plus as well. We need to pay this woman. Who cares if she already got 20 million? You made a deal. We just need to acknowledge all these people are making ridiculous amounts of money anyway. Like the amount of money does not fucking matter. You made a deal and then you broke the deal. Pay her what she deserves, or not deserves, is that you agreed to pay her. And also give me $1 million while you're at it. Do you hear that, Scarlett Johansson? Give me a 20th of what you got. But I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. I know the Loki review is a little bit late. I hope you understand. You know, I don't want to call it a filler episode. It's a setup episode, though. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Thank you for listening. What If? Hope you're excited for What If. If you want to, confront me about what I said today, you could be free to talk to me on Twitter. And you can follow me, too, at Undisputed Stud. You know, it's two main characters that have Undisputed Studios, but it's Undisputed Stud, which is a funny username. All right, you could tweet me there. I have a Patreon. I think this is the first time I'm plugging it on this podcast. If you would like to support the podcast, I also make some videos on YouTube. You could, support there if you would like. Patreon.com/undisputed. Leave some reviews on the podcast sites, all that good stuff. You've listened to podcasts before. You know what to do. We'll see you here next week for What If, episode numero uno. All right, we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.